Good evening, and thank you for joining us this evening. I'd like to call this meeting to order. For those of you at home, if you would like to contact the board, you could reach us at clerk@fulton.cnyric.org. In the event of an emergency, we need to evacuate the building. You can go right out to the doors behind the Hendricksons and go to the left. Mr. Palvino's got an office door here. We can go out that way. I hope we don't have to go out the windows. Send Mr. Hendrickson down first. Would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. There is nobody signed up for public forum this evening, so if I can get someone to move action 1.06 to approve the October 29th regular meeting minutes. Second, Tim, Jen. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstaining? Passes 7-0-0. For meetings that are coming up, we have November and December's meetings on the calendar. Don't forget that on November 19th, we will have our budget board retreat. And if we don't have any further questions, I'm going to pass it on to Mr. Palvino, Superintendent's report.
Good evening, everyone. Well, welcome, and tonight we're going to start off with our salute to veterans. I will just say that all of our schools did a variety of things. I had the opportunity to go to the junior high as well as Volney Elementary School. I had to leave right in the middle of the junior high one. I had an obligation that I had to get to. And I heard great things, and also to cap off at the end of the day, Volney's had a 104-year-old veteran from World War II and a 102-year-old veteran from World War II. It was pretty amazing to meet them and shake their hands and to watch our kids interact with the veterans and realize the impact that all of these individuals had had on their lives, plus the countless others that obviously weren't in the room that had given their service to our country. And it was just great watching our kids and that day to have that experience and watching their faces and the way they interacted and the way they listened and interacted. It was truly a special day that we need to recognize each and every day of the calendar, not just one day of the year. And so this evening, I see the junior high is here. I don't know, Mr. Kaprowski, if you'd like to start off and introduce your student this evening. We have
we have Sullivan Strong, who's here today. He was one of our readers at the Veterans Day celebration. We had a total of 9 students, and they did a great job. We had all 3 performing, our 3 performance groups take turns to sing patriotic songs. And then in between the songs, we had the students come up to read some tributes to the veterans and what Veterans Day meant to them. And Solomon's going to read his here in a couple of minutes, but we are in our 2nd year of doing a formal presentation, so to speak, for our veterans. Last year we had about 6 veterans. We had our band, and we did a live stream for our school to watch. This year, our entire school community was involved. We had over close to 35 veterans that showed up. We had Ms. Prawl that was there. From the board, we had Mayor Rice that came and had spoke to the veterans. There were some teary eyes from our veterans. They had standing ovations from our students. We had the 3rd gym set up for them to have a little bit of refreshments to begin, and then they had a breakfast at the end. And when they came in, the whole gymnasium stood and gave them a standing ovation. So there was a lot to be proud of that was happening that day, and I think the veterans really appreciated it. So one of the gentlemen who is from the Hannibal chapter said he is definitely going to spread the word to get word out. So it was great. Like I said, a lot of teary eyes. So Sullivan, would you like to read your?
It's on.
Okay, perfect.
Freedom is a privilege, not a right. It's important to honor veterans because they risked everything for us. Veterans were willingly sacrificing everything for us. The pure thought someone would willingly sacrifice their lives for someone they barely know is enough for them to be heroes in my eyes. Without veterans, we might not even be able to be alive. It is indescribable how much we owe to veterans.
And you can see that from Sullivan's tribute, that's how a lot of our kids wrote to our veterans. And so when the veterans sat in front, they were very, the impact of hearing those words from the kids really hit home. You could tell there was, like I said, teary-eyed. Mrs. Platt's here as well. She's going to kind of explain a little bit of a fundraiser that we did for the veterans, so she's going to explain that.
And then the other thing that we did along with celebrating our veterans is we did a blanket drive. So we worked with the after-school community school program, and some students helped build. They actually sewed blankets and pillows, and we did a blanket drive throughout the district, and we had over 100 blankets. And they were actually dropped off this afternoon to the VA clinic in Oswego, and then some got held close to home for the VFW to get given out at Christmas. So that was very impactful. Lots of students were very excited, so we will continue to build on to that for next year. And our hope is for next year to have a living history museum as well. So celebrating the veterans, but also teaching the students what that means to be a veteran. So we try to drop the seed of the Veterans League meeting this year, so they're very excited to start building that for next year. So it was a very success. Thank you, Sully.
That was our Veterans Day, so it was good. Thank you.
Thank you.
So Sully, sorry, not Sully. Just a great job. Thank you for getting up there and speaking this evening and representing the junior high and all the students. You did a fabulous job. I like the way you enunciate. It shows your passion. Thank you for being here, and thank you for what I know is in your future too. So I'm looking forward to that.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you to the administration at the junior high, as well as the staff was very involved. Saw a lot of people helping and incorporating, so it really involved that entire community.
They did. It was great.
And thank you to all of the other schools that participated in things as well.
Yes.
So it was
Mr.
great.
Paulina, can I just add one thing? I just wanted to add one thing to Mr. Kropaski and to Sally. I also have an 8th grade student, Raylan Cooper.
Oh, I know.
And I have to say, especially to his mother, what an outstanding young man you have. He is a friend to all. He has a wonderful reputation and a very good job. So thank you for everything you do, Sally.
Another round of applause.
So that's a great way to start off our November and a season where family and community and caring about one another is really so important. So thank you for kicking us off. The next item this evening is our district-wide November updates. And we're on the screen. First item this evening is, who's driving this evening? Thank you. Is attendance. That was a question that was brought up at our last board meeting, so we thought we'd start with attendance this evening. So if we go on to the next slide, please.
So we thought we'd bring back the strategic coherence plan update that for the next 5 years we'll be focusing on reducing chronic absenteeism by at least 10% across elementary, middle, and high school by June of 2029, focusing on these strategies: engagement, goal setting, SEL practices, MTSS, and monitoring and celebrating. This year, all students have set attendance goals as part of their personal growth path. They're monitoring those in their classrooms and tracking and rewarding those. And we are continuing with our second step program in the elementary buildings, and really just focusing in on bringing awareness to attendance. And here are some of the action steps this year. We've been meeting with Alex Richmond from City BOCES and talking about creating student-centered videos around absenteeism being developed by the students at the elementary, middle, and high school, and talking about the impact of when you're not in school and how that impacts your learning. Pulling resources from Attendance Works, setting up Facebook posts for awareness, sending out promotional things from Parent Square about attendance. I know we're sending out attendance letters through Parent Square as well. Alex is also working on updating our website, so we'll have some updates about attendance on that piece. We're working on setting postcards with goals that the students are setting and their progress to send those home. Our homeschool liaisons and SS team work on phone calls home for attendance, home visits. And the schools are also posting daily attendance and sharing those with the buildings. So I think that's bringing an awareness to it, and we're really trying to engage students with interdisciplinary activities. I'm talking about promoting clubs when students are invested in the school and feel a sense of belonging to increase attendance.
I know that you do things with the elementary level. At the high school level, do we notice, like, keeping track of these things? Is something working better than the other?
Here you go.
Well, I mean, I knew you had this graph in here, but I was,
So the students are individually keeping track
Right.
at the junior high and high school level?
Oh, they are? Okay.
They are. That was one of the things all 6 buildings are looking and focusing. Kids are practicing, but the idea of goal setting and goal writing is starting with this because it was the most tangible piece that we could look at. It was something that was easiest to monitor and track. So students should be looking at their attendance regularly and kind of monitoring that and setting their goals starting there. Was this the next slide?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so one of the things that we can already see is the graph left is comparing September of last year to September of this year. So the blue is 23, the red is 24. And then the graph on the right is October of 23 versus 24. So you can see, especially, you see how GRB kind of sticks out, but the idea of the red bar being below the blue bar is an important one. So the focus hopefully has started to gain some traction and is moving us in the right direction. You see, September, we were not trending in the right direction, but we hadn't had time to start to form those habits and really get a focus. Now that we have, we can see we're moving in the right direction.
So the next update we're going to talk about November 1st. So the day was structured around feedback from our teachers that we received that they really wanted time to collaborate. So for staff who remained in the district, we had 3 large chunks of time that focused on collaboration as vertical teams, horizontal, and then coming back and talking about the debriefing from the vertical, what adjustments need to be made to assessments or curriculum that they're working on. And then we also had PE offerings throughout that session. We had several departments, PE, world language, art, music, TAs, and tutors who attended offerings from city BOCES. The feedback we received, we had 159 responses, 72 UPK to 4th grade staff, 86 5 through 12 teachers feedback from the day, and we had a lot of positive responses. They liked the structure. They were requesting more vertical time to meet 512 and pre-K 4 to talk about alignment of strategies, assessments, and really making sure that there's a connection between each of the years as the students progress. We asked these teachers, please tell us one thing that you learned, and here are a few of the things that really stood out when we asked them. Supporting students through effective strategies, utilizing resources to optimize RTI time, and applying TCIS training, navigating Read 180. We had a lot of sessions on Eureka Squared, our new math program. And a lot of time just to share ideas and strategies that we've been in study groups that we started implementing last year, and how those classroom practices are now filtering in through each of the grade levels.
So based on the learning from the day, one of the things that we asked is how do we apply that and leverage that into regular practice? So teachers looked at the things that they had taken away, the things that they collaborated with each other about, and talked about what does that look like in practice in classrooms, in their positions, where they're working, what further pieces do they need as well. So there are already, we've talked to faculty members since and staff. They've been talking about what are we doing on the next day, what's the plan for the next steps based on what we learned and how we can utilize that. summary, just kind of quick, one of the things, other than the narrative feedback that we got, we asked, did this align with our mission, with where we're moving forward, the idea of our dragon ways, the driven, wise, and resilient. As you can see, people, a large majority of people felt that they were either very aligned or aligned with our goals and where we're moving. So overall feedback was pretty positive. And if there were specifics, we got right back to folks to talk to them about what they needed.
And the board you had received the listing of all the different options in your Board of Ed weeklies as well, so you can take a look at all the different options that our teachers had. And I think that's something that we should kick a lot of pride in. We take the feedback from teachers and we provide that range of opportunities. Some districts just don't have they're not able to offer the range. They'll offer maybe two or three things to choose from, which then is limiting and then doesn't meet the needs. So this allows our teachers to select things that will align, and also the collaboration was very strong that day. That was a very important part of the day. So teachers and the teams worked together, really tackling some data and looking at things.
We tried some things that we hadn't before, like we had 5 through 12 vertical collaboration. So by content department, like the science department, the math department, ELA, social studies, 5 through 12 got together, talked about some of those essentials, some of those skills that they're working on, and kind of looked at how can I, as a secondary teacher, come back to those elementary models and things of learning. How, as an elementary teacher, can I prepare kids for what they're going to need when they get to the high school level? So seeing that across, outside of my own little room and my own little silo was pretty powerful for people. That was something that they probably talked about the most, was they want to spend a little more time looking at that and how they can cross curriculum, look at more projects and more ideas that they can start to develop that cross over grade levels, but also cross content areas. So how do we build some of those project-based learners?
And really bridging that gap from 6th grade to 7th grade, those transition years, and from 8th grade to 9th grade. And I think building relationships among the teachers, I think right now we had ECC and SEC this morning, and they were already talking about making relationships and connecting with people with questions, sending ideas, like, does this look right? Or if I'm doing a social studies assessment, is it matching what you're looking for at the junior high? So I think that's pretty powerful.
Are we actively engaging our TAs and monitors in our staff development days? Do they feel like you're offering them what they need to help them in their jobs? Because sometimes we throw stuff at them, but it might not necessarily touch what they do in their daily.
So this year the TAs and the tutors went out to city and they had a selection of courses that they could choose from, and then we kept the aides in-house. And we structured them elementary and secondary. That was one of the feedbacks that we heard, that they always felt like they were grouped together and they have different needs. So we separated elementary from secondary, and then we went through things that they were asking for. Active supervision, writing referrals, what you say and how you say it, resources to meet students' needs in the classroom. What does it look like to support a student when they're writing, when they're reading? I think Mr. Kapowski was part of one of the presenters for the aides there. So we tapped into a lot of our in-house trainers to meet those needs.
And the specific feedback, so part of the feedback that we got from those 159 people was identify which position you're in. We got a good sampling from the aides and TAs that was very positive.
That's good to hear. Thank you.
So the final section we have is regionalization, and that's this came out of New York State in August, September, and on October 2nd it showed up in our SED monitoring system, and it was a 54-page document, I believe it is, that we worked on, and originally it was due November 1st. Now it's due December 6th because districts across the state said it's not really doing this justice. What this is all about, and you can read that it's a collaborative model for addressing local challenges and educational goals. The focus that the commissioners talked about is that we need to find ways to create equitable educational opportunities for all students, establish systems for districts to engage in continual improvement processes, and develop a model for addressing ongoing educational and fiscal challenges. So when they're talking about the educational opportunities for kids, smaller districts tend to have very narrow range of opportunities for kids. And so I think what the commissioner's getting at is, as districts come together and start looking at the new graduation initiatives in New York State, how can we work with each other? So in smaller districts, you might have, 8 kids from this district and 4 another, and you may do distance learning opportunities for college courses. Or you may, you look at, like we have early college high school, where we have 2 partnerships with Hannibal and with Mexico. And we work on R2. I've been pitching opportunities in areas that we may want to explore, like education, early college, career high school, for education and create teachers of the future, educators of the future. Opportunities perhaps in agriculture. So really those are the kinds of things. So what's going to happen is all of the data that's been selected, if you want to go on to the next slide there, here's the timeline. So we have from till December 6th, and what we've done is we've taken all of the information that we've compiled, all of our data, we looked at that, and you'll see some summaries here in a couple slides of some areas, and each district is doing that. We have to turn this in by December 6th, and then the BOCES, so it'll be city BOCES for us, will take all that information, and they're going to identify those 5 to 10 trends. Then they're going to bring the districts together in those priorities, and we'll say, here's some priorities that have been identified, and then districts will have the choice. They can either choose not to, and this is the part that's not real clear across the state. You're not forced into this. It's opportunities. So if there are opportunities that don't make sense for Fulton, Fulton's not participating. That's kind of how that will work, but there are other areas where Fulton may, this is a really good, important area, then that's an area we may dig into. So for example, one of the things when we were meeting with Pulaski, and it was at Sandy Creek, that was at that meeting, we happened to be in a meeting where they were doing some support. And our former Mrs. Geithner is actually the one that's been tabbed by BOCES to help lead that part. So we were working with them, and they started talking about McKinney-Vento students and the number of students who are identified as homeless. And the area is about a 50-mile range that we can transport kids. And you'll see there are neighborhoods, for example, in the neighborhood where I reside, 4 different school districts are coming into my community. I noticed that's very new, never seen that before. And these districts sit next to each other, but they're all coming into my community to pick up kids each and every day. So how can we look at that as a fiscal cost where we're not sending maybe a bus every day, but we may be sharing that with 2 other districts? So we might be the transport bus for that neighborhood in that area, whereas another district would be up maybe in the Oswego area picking up kids and then bringing them back to our districts. So the idea is, how can that be coordinated? So that may be an example of not replicating services across school districts, but sharing costs across districts where it may end up much more fiscally responsible than everybody sending a bus into the same neighborhoods. So that's an example of a fiscal. So the idea is that we'll have all this information in by December 6th. We're going to continue sharing it with our different committees, our different groups, and then what's going to happen is by April 1st, Chris Todd has to turn in a regional interim progress report due to New York State Education Department with October 1, 2025 final regionalization plans due with areas where we may focus. So another final great example, and I'll turn it over to the rest of my team, would be the work we did around early literacy, where all of the school districts bought in about 5 years ago, and we all started doing our early reading initiative across our OCLE, our Oswego County Learning Initiative, Literacy Initiative, which resulted in consistency across the county with using the science of reading, which ironically is what the commissioner is now wanting across the state of New York. So here in this county, that's an area where we had focused. So you can see the timeline that's very broad, and we're just continuing to get more information. We talked to superintendents today, and Chris said, just to get our information in, and we're going to work with the process as the state provides us more information. Renee and Jeff?
So the work that we're doing with regionalization coincides with the Blue Ribbon Commission's report and where we're gonna go with the portrait of the graduate as well. So all of this is kind of coming out at once as we're looking to make these big wholesale changes in education over the next 8 or 10 years. The regionalization was, take a look at where you were the last 10 years. Look at the data that you have from 10 years ago, 2013, 14, all the way out through COVID, through now, 23, 24, and see the kind of work that you have, how your district is moving, is shaping, is staying the same wherever it happens to be, as you're planning. So for us, part of the activity was to look at our own longitudinal data all at once, looking at the 3 areas, and digging into that data. You can see there's academic capacity and social, cultural areas. Funny thing is, our strategic coherence plan deals with pretty much the same 3 things. Academic, if you think about those circles, academic is that green circle in the middle. Capacity is basically those systems that surround that, and then cultural is the red one on the outside. So we already have kind of a plan that has started to look at this, and what we do to support our learners within that drive forward, I guess, as we look at the portrait of a graduate coming out. And the Blue Ribbon Commission and the Regents, New York State, just released last week the next steps with that, which is like a 28-page PowerPoint of, it's called New York Inspires, what that's gonna look like, and then kind of a timeline and the big picture of why we're doing this and what it's gonna look like for our kids. So that's where all this ties together, is that this regionalization is to take a look at how we can share resources, and start to build a vision for what we want to see over the next 10 years.
So when we met as an ATM group, administrative leadership committee, we went through and dove into the data that was given to us and had to identify our strengths, celebrations, gaps, and challenges, set goals, and identify supports that we need. So in the area of academics, our strength was really, we offer a diverse course options. I think when we compared the 2018 to this year, we jumped from 25 course options to 52. So we are definitely a district that is willing to take risks and offer new courses. We have a strong student performance group, recognize those achievements. Again, those challenges that we have, attendance rates, socioeconomic disparities, and really expanding our career and academic pathways. As far as goals, building more connections to real world applications. We're dipping our toes in that with our interdisciplinary units. How do we really expand that to go transdisciplinary when we're thinking about the portrait of the graduate and developing those career pathways. And to support those goals, we really need to prepare our students for their jobs, aligning our curriculum with industry, and supporting students with disabilities.
Sure. So again, in each area, we looked at our strengths, our gaps, our goals, and our needs. Something that we noticed, we have strong community partnerships and pretty strong comprehensive student support services offered in our schools. We have an SEL program that we've adopted. We use second steps across our buildings. But as you can imagine, we can always look for more support for our students. Our needs are different than they used to be. When you look at our data longitudinally, and you look and see what our discipline data looks like and what our needs are, our students facing behavioral issues currently is different than it was. And we know that. We know it's our littles that need more support right now, and our middle and secondary kids need different supports than they did as well. Everyone needs the supports, but it's shifted in where do we want to use our resources. So we want to continue to increase community involvement, empower students to take charge of their learning. That's part of our strategic coherence plan, is that goal setting piece and having them kind of drive where they want to go. That again aligns well with the portrait of a graduate. Our school family connection, giving our students and their families what they need for them to be successful. So more community partnerships, it's a strength of ours, but it's one that we can continue to build upon. Our early college high school is a good model and example of that. What we're doing for our capstone project and our synergy project at the middle school. And of course, a big part of this from New York Inspires is how do we continue to professionally develop our staff so that they can support our kids as these changes happen, because if we don't understand and don't know ourselves, it's pretty hard for us to expect our kids to be able to be successful with this.
So in the area of capacity, we identified as supporting our new teachers really well. We have a new educator course, we have mentors and coaches. our staff is willing to be innovative and try new approaches. And we have a strong UPK program. We now have 2 full-day classrooms in all of our buildings, and we just opened up another full day at the Y today. So that's really a nice addition for our district. Gaps and challenges, we need to really expand on our grant writing, addressing our mental health needs of our students, and how do we retain the staff that we've hired and expand those initiatives. And then how do we, expand the revenue to support the needs of our district.
So, kind of eye-opening for us as we looked at this regionalization was that, like we do in schools and classrooms, we assume people are doing it the way that we're doing it. And just talking with the districts from Oswego County, we have different expectations, we have different plans, we have different modes of what we do and how we do it. So a big part of this will be working with, having the superintendents and their deputy superintendents and folks work together with Mr. Todd and his team to build this up and figure out what it's going to look like over the course of the next decade. But going into next year, what's our plan going to be? What does this look like? We'll continue to do our work with our elementary and secondary curriculum council, our administrative teams, the DCC site base that we did. We'll continue to talk about these there. And then we have, each building has a student council, a student senate, and we have a district advisory team that works with those representatives as well.
We really want to get more student voice in as we develop these plans.
Yeah, so again, I think our next districts, our DCC and site base is next month. So if you know folks who can bring kids, their students with, encourage them to do so, because we can use that representation to get the student voice. Is going to be an important part of this.
So we're going to build dragons that are driven, wise, and resilient. I think this plan, it's nice to see that the state's work is aligned with Fulton's work. I'd like to say we started it here, right? But to know that we're that aligned is good. That means we're anticipating, we're preparing our kids for hopefully and our staff for the next and what's coming on in the next few years. And with that, the next point of our superintendent's report is it should be 2025-26 budget, not 24-25. And it's the 25-26 design and development calendar. Dr. Lisi?
Sure, I'm just going to pop it up here real quick. Let's take a second. So while this is coming up here, we just have the tentative timeline for the annual budget. Let's see here. So part of that already, we've scheduled the workshop for November 19th. We're obviously started the process already to some extent. Part of the draft budget also are additional dates for workshops that you posted up there in yellow. So we want to discuss the budget parameters on the 10th of December, and we have a few other dates in there for workshops as well. Again, this is just a draft, but I'd like everybody to kind of take a look at that, make sure that the dates work for you. And of course, we're looking at a budget vote and board election on May 20th, so we're getting there fast and furiously. So again, this is a draft, and we'll make this hopefully permanent.
We normally do it at the second meeting in November. We finalize it, and obviously it's a living document.
Right,
So.
thanks. All right. Any questions with the timeline? Very good. And also, just a bit of additional information. So we're looking at an upcoming safety and security forum on January 21st. This is the follow-up to the forum we did previously last month. And again, we had tremendous turnout. We were pleased to see that and want to provide the community with additional information regarding our efforts in that area. So we're looking at January 21st, and we'll send out more information regarding that as that time comes closer.
And on the retreat for the 19th, are we going to have anything pre that, or it'll be presented that evening? Will there be pre-information?
Yeah, we'll send out some information for you to work through, and then we'll address that when we get there on the 19th.
We also have a tentative BOE budget workshop, it says on the 21st as well.
So
we have
Go
the
down,
19th.
January 21st. So if we have safety and security and
Yeah.
tentative, that might.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll look at the budget, the date there on the 21st. It's a good point.
Thank you. Good catch.
Good catch.
That's what I wrote down.
We're gonna bilocate
All
that,
right.
so.
Make sure everybody's paying attention. That's a good one. Thank you. And that's the conclusion of the superintendent's report. Thank you.
Before we conclude, I have a few things on the presentation. First, I wanted to say kudos to our team on the Superintendent's Day. I've heard from staff from several different buildings, and it was overwhelmingly successful, especially the collaboration part. Even simple things that teachers use different words like goal setting or, main topic or central theme. Being able to talk with their colleagues to incorporate that into, oh yeah, well that's a good point, I'll use that so the kids are prepared, moving forward. I've heard a lot of positive feedback for that, so kudos to you. I wanted to go back to the attendance piece. That was one of the things I asked. You guys mentioned Attendance Works. I'm not familiar with that. Can anybody explain to me what Attendance Works is?
It's a resource that has research-based strategies that you can use that has systems and structures that you can follow. It has interventions you can follow. It has pre-made posts that you can share out to customize to your own district. So it's a resource we've been using for a while. That's one this year that we're going to tap into to send information out around attendance.
Okay, great.
Attendanceworks.org.
Okay.
And I can
Send information out to students, staff,
yes,
parents.
like the impact of
the
the
whole-
signature date. And leveraging some of the strategies that they recommend in there to get students involved. And that was where Alex was suggesting that we have students make videos about attendance at each of the different levels.
And then another strategy, you said that one thing that we're doing is doing home visits. Do we know who is doing the home visits and how many we've conducted so far?
I don't know how many we've conducted, but that's something that our homeschool liaisons and counselors will keep track of attendance and then make phone calls, and then if needed, we'll reach out and do home visits.
Okay, just wondering if maybe in the future we can get that. I know that your data said that we had around 100 to 150 absenteeism, at the GRB. I know last year our numbers were about the same, and then we plummeted to our absentee rate into the 70s. So, by that time spring and rolled around, and that was something that we were facing as well. So I'm nervous, moving forward, what that looks like. And, I'll be very honest, this is very personal to me. I was a chronic absentee kid my junior and my senior year. I lived on my own, I worked full-time, and I went to school. And I was one of those kids that could miss a week and show up and pass a test and then not come back. That was me. And so while I see, what we're doing, and these are some good things to start at, I'm just reviewing our policies, and I'm just trying to figure out how this is gonna be different than what we've been doing in the past. What other interventions are we going to be doing to make sure that this time, this is different?
Probably the biggest intervention is having the kids work on their goal setting around this. So it makes it individualized to them. It's not the adults doing the work, it's the kids doing the work. The feedback that we've gotten from staff already is that kids are more aware of oh, I missed this many days, and it only takes 2 days a month, and I'm already below that threshold point. It's a lot less than I had thought. It's kind of those feelings that the kids have. And for kids who have been chronically absent, they're working on realistic goals. So if I was at 60%, it doesn't make sense for me to jump straight to 90%. And I mean, it's nice, but what's realistic over the course of this time is maybe move up to 80% from my 60% if I can get there first and see how that goes and monitor and adjust. So it's kind of a 2-for-1. We work on the goal setting specifically, but then we shine the light on attendance itself at the elementary level. More building-wide celebrations and things, and at the secondary level, it becomes more individual. They're doing it during their it's a
AAA or
AAA time that they have during the day where they're looking specifically at that, setting those goals, and hopefully moving that forward. I know that it's something the administrative team, principals as well, and their student support teams have been pretty focused on, to make sure that if we have kids that are slipping off, and heading in the wrong direction, we're trying to head that off as soon as possible. So it is something that we've worked on, but I will tell you that post-COVID, it's been a little bit slipperier for all of us because it was one of those where we don't want people who aren't well coming to school, but at the same time, we want to encourage people to come to school. This is the first year, I think, post-2020 that we've really said, okay, we're gonna really drive forward and get back on attendance train and really push that forward. So right now, again, we only have 2 months of data. It trended in the right direction after 1 month. When we bring back the Q2 updates, hopefully we'll continue to see that. And we're gonna monitor it more often than that. We're doing that regularly, but when you see it next, we hope to continue to see that trend where this year has continued to improve for our kids.
Yeah, so I definitely hope to see that too. I am gonna point out, like, part of our policy too, that I'm hoping that when you do come back, we can discuss. So according to our policy, we are supposed to be reviewing every 5 weeks reviews, going from the 10 weeks and things like that. Each building needs to have their interventions, response, incentives, whether it's home visits, even pins, things like that. Our current policy also states that students that reach below a 91% attendance rate, their credit is at jeopardy. They've got to either make up that credit as well. I want to make sure that we are providing as many incentives as we can. We're thinking outside the box, but we're also holding students and families accountable. That we have these policies in place for a reason. We can't just overlook the kids not coming to school, but they're at a 70% rate, but they still get the credit. We have these policies in place for a reason. We also need to, as a district, I was reading our school law book and it said that we need to review our policy as our attendance declines, and that needs to be reviewed annually. Our policy on attendance hasn't been reviewed since 2018. I hold myself accountable for that as well. I'm on the policy committee. This is something that we need to do. So I guess I'm pushing all this data now so that we can meet as a policy committee, we can meet as a school district. We're going into the budget season. If it's something like a truancy officer, something that we may need, we might need to budget for that. If this is an issue that these incentives and responses aren't working, like what else can we do as a district? Even as a school district, things like, at the elementary, my kid has a half day Thursday and Friday for school conferences, which is phenomenal, but the secondary doesn't. Now, I don't have an issue with that, but there's working parents who we know aren't going to send their secondary kids to school because they need them to watch those kids when they get off the bus. It's even that little bit of scheduling that's leading to absenteeism. What can we do better as a district? Whether, I'm talking from personal experience. If somebody showed up at my door, by the way, nobody ever showed up at my door when I was in school, but if somebody showed up at my door either saying, pins, talking about credit recovery, holding me accountable, I probably would have showed up more. But if they would have incentivized as early grade, if you get your butt to school, we can graduate early. Any kind of outside the box thinking, I know I would have gotten there. So I think as a district, we need to kind of think of different things that we haven't thought of before to really incentivize these students. But getting these reports frequently, since they have to be reviewed every 5 weeks at each different school, and they need to have a pyramid according to our policy, I would love to get more information more frequently so we can move forward between policy and update that if that needs to be done, or budget, anything for that, if my colleagues agree.
I do, for sure. And having the kids take responsibility for their education and their attendance and monitoring it, I like the idea of that, but is it really going to hit home with the kids who are chronically absent? If I was a chronically absent student, from what I have seen just in the past, they don't care that they're absent 10%. Like, somehow we have to connect it to maybe you're gonna graduate early, you're gonna get this credit if you can just, like, short-term goals.
Yeah.
They're setting goals for themselves, fine, that is great. Everybody has to learn to set a goal and achieve that goal. But what do these goals look like? How are they setting them? Who's in charge of making sure that these are achievable goals? Because if they don't achieve that small goal to get them to school, they're just not gonna care. They're not gonna come, oh, I failed at this too. And it's just another pile of sand on top of them already feeling suffocated.
So to Fallon's point about the pyramid, the goal setting of the work is a tier 1 intervention, which is mainly designed for our kids who have been successful to keep them successful. Our school home liaisons, our student support teams, those are built the tier 2, tier 3 interventions for the kids who are already there. For the kids who are already struggling, you're right, the goal setting is not gonna, it's not alone gonna do it. That's where our student support team, their school home liaisons, their work with families is to get them back on track. So
what are we doing different this year that we haven't in the past for that group?
for that group, we're continuing to try and find ways, be as creative as possible, trying to find, incentivize, call families, reach out, talk to them, target, and figure out what we can do. Some of the things that, and I think part of it is awareness, where attendance works comes in, letting families know that when you take 2 weeks of vacation during the year to go to Disney or to go somewhere, that pretty much automatically makes you chronically absent. Those kind of things, and missing that in 3rd grade and missing that in 11th grade have very different results and consequences for the kids. Because missing a week of Algebra 2 versus a week of 3rd grade can be very significant. So part of it is awareness with the families and connecting with the families, and part of it is continuing to keep a light on it and drive with it. Again, I think we've lost a little bit of the focus of attendance being one of the things that we could push with. We've not been sure that that's something we wanted to drive, and now that feels like we're post-COVID, we can put our foot down on the gas a little bit and drive us back in the right direction, because we have seen that our overall attendance might be better, but our level of chronic absenteeism is probably the worst it's ever been. So getting those kids back on board is going to be.
And Square is also helping as a form of communication. I know the high school commented right away that at the beginning of the year, they had a lot of parents calling in, responding because they were getting notifications through Parent Square. So I think that's another piece that's possible.
I almost feel like our attendance is getting worse, but our options are getting bigger for these kids, so they have more to choose from. I can't but think that maybe our students really don't realize what we have to offer. I know I'm guilty of it. I don't know what Fulton had to offer when my kids were in the high school. I had no idea. So maybe I think it's really important to figure out a way, how are we gonna present these options to the kids and their parents? If you don't like biology, then don't take biology, take environmental science. There are options. How are we presenting those options to our students to get them to come to school? We have all these different pathways, like maybe at an open house, like if you're into the science here, you're gonna go into the old gym and you're going to learn the different pathways and the different careers and the different choices, because I'm guilty. I didn't know, I wasn't as involved and reading up on it and getting the information like I should have, and I just wonder how everybody else is doing it. And maybe that could be a way to make that connection and get the kids here.
That was, when Jeff and I met with Alice, that was one of the things we talked about, was promoting the clubs, promoting the different pathways, and how do we do that in small chunks, videos or clips that we could have students making and putting out almost like.
And the scheduling, like, it's always bothered me. I never knew what my kids were taking. I still don't know what my kids are taking. It's up to them. They don't know.
Yeah.
They don't know what to do. It's just basically what is presented and what is put in front of them is where they're going to go. Like, I think that you're pretty good at math, so why don't you try taking this course? Well, what else is there? You know, they don't know.
I've been saying for years that
And-
we have a huge communication issue with.
So maybe I'm definitely not saying that I have all of the answers at all. But maybe if we were more involved in that step at the very beginning, like each year, like, and each half year, you know, whenever, you know, you do however, semesters or quarters, whenever they change classes, get the parents involved and let the kids make that determination. And if they switch paths, then they can, like with all of this
And
new
what
stuff.
you're hitting on is really key to the attendance piece.
Right,
Because attendance is a symptom of something.
not wanting to be there.
Right.
Right.
So academically, how do we get higher
Right.
engagement, more pathways, more lift, and that ties back to the regionalization. What do we offer? Like
We just
When
have
they
to
said-
find a way to present it to the kids so they know what is being offered.
And their families.
And their families, yes.
And figure out ways so that it's not just the traditional, we've always done it this way.
Yes.
So
And
can we
look-
do that?
Look and say, we're working on it,
I know.
but it's not a fast, snap your fingers
No,
kind of deal.
I know that
It's
we've been
part of a
talking about
5-year
it for
10-year
at
plan.
least 4 years now, though.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
let's do one thing. Let's just say we're gonna do one thing and do it.
Right.
Just do it. And if it works, it works. If it doesn't, then we'll move on.
I know
Is
one
that
of
what
the
Miss-
feedbacks we got about the civic readiness, we started it this year in 8th grade with it at the single point. We started a worksheet for students to see that, and we had guidance counselors say that this was the first year we had students coming in with those saying, I want these next
Great.
classes
Yeah.
because I want the seal. And they had that laid out, so I think that
The good
is,
kids, like, I shouldn't say the good kids, but the kids that are more involved in their learning and academics, like that value
Something
it.
that we're trying to do with regionalization and the pathways work is look at how do we get the prerequisite look from 5th through 8th to get kids and their families ready. So like, if we have these things offered, not just having it an end of 8th grade right before I go to high school kind of look and get overwhelmed with all the things but start to already say like, I have these options laid out in front of me and I'm able to change. If I want to take the individual arts pathway, I could start that, but then I change my mind and I actually want to go into the healthcare pathway or I want to do something different. How do we build those things up so that kids have those options and engagements? And one of the pieces that we know that we need to really focus on, not just us, but schools, is how do we engage the community with supporting that as well? So not just kids and their families, but like what we're finding with our early college, high school programs is when kids are invested in an internship or those extras, that gets them engaged.
Yeah.
And guess what happens to attendance as a result? It sweeps up with them.
Absolutely, and I think to Jen's point too is, getting these children and these families aware of, these are your requirements, these are what is required of you, and then these are all the other things that we have extra moving forward, especially, we know the junior and senior year, that attendance rate drops off. So
We
if we
just
can get
forget
them,
about them when they're at the high school.
But
I've always thought that.
not putting a kid in chemistry automatically when they've already met those requirements, we don't have to do that. If we have, and say, hey, well, why don't you take this college class? This is something that you might be good in, and the kid will say, this is gonna save your family money when you go to college. I'm gonna book all my kids in as many college classes as I can so they're not in student loan debt when they graduate. Or a kid who doesn't think they're smart enough for college, they can go take a college class and say, oh my God, I did that, I can do it. Or students that we know culturally drop out at 16 or 17, that we know that's typically a path for them and their families because we know that they leave school to help financial with their families. Pathways to get them to graduate, even if we can hold them an extra 6 months or whatever before they drop, get them prepared and graduated for their career. I just think
Incentive knowing that when they leave, they have a job,
yes,
because this is gonna get you there.
yes, or at least you're a high school graduate, with this stuff. We can do things so much better, I think, in conjunction with attendance and the incentives piece as well. But it's gotta be a collaborative effort between the classes that we're offering, the requirements that families are aware of. You only need these requirements and then we can fill your schedule with these. I think it's a multi-level approach.
that was one of the things we definitely recognized when we were going through the regionalization data was, how do we align our curriculum with industry? How do we prepare for different pathways and offer those, for instance? So that is something we are,
I just feel like we're like
Yeah.
a shrub. You know what I mean? Like we're just a shrub instead of being a tree with we have a good solid base, a trunk, and we're coming off in like the branches, but we're all still connected instead of just like this big massive confusion and going every which way.
We're definitely a
And
tree,
circles.
but we that was part of the regionalization too, is like how do we prune the tree, how do we drive it in the right direction for us? And to your point, like you said, it seems like we've been working on this or saying this, we have made adjustments we sometimes don't even think about. Like for instance, us moving to take the English regions in 10th grade, opened up a lot of opportunities for our kids post-Regents, which gave them an extra year of more choices, more options for ELA classes that they want to take. When we looked at regionalization, we're offering fewer AP courses than we used to. And the initial look at that is what? Well, what are we replacing the AP courses with? College classes.
Right.
So which one is more beneficial to that point for what our kids need and what they need going forward? It's probably those college classes that they're getting more opportunities for those, whether it's science, whether it's English, social studies, whatever they happen to be. So we are doing it, it's kind of slow and it's piece by piece, and unless we shine a light on those things and say, we are doing that, it's easy to overlook them and think like, well, we've been talking about it but not doing it. We have been doing it, but we need to do more of it, and we need to go back to your point and make sure that the things that we're doing are engaging the kids the way that we intended them to engage the kids and their families with those pieces. So we're more tree-like than shrub-like, but we need to cut some branches off to make sure that our strongest branches are the ones we want to grow.
Yeah.
And you can see, for those of us who have kids who are not in school anymore, I can look in and see the differences that have been made, even in the, 2015, 2012, those years from where my kids were to where you guys are now, you see where the branches have grown. And oh wow, there really is a lot
We do
more.
a lot, are we growing or are we stunted? Because we still have the same problem. Like, we're not
Right.
getting the kids to school.
Right.
Like, it's great for people and the kids who are invested, 100%. But what about the kids that aren't as invested because they have other things going on? How are we going to get over that hump to get them to school, to realize what's happening? Because that's where we're failing the kids.
And what I've
Because they're
noticed
not
with
coming.
some students who are doing the early college high school program, those are the kids who may have had that chronic absenteeism. But like Mr. Hendrickson said, they have their internships and there's different avenues for them. So maybe getting more kids involved. I don't know
Right.
how many students have seats for in these programs, but I mean, that is a small growth that we've made in the last couple of years, at least from some of the families that have talked to me, with their students.
For us, whether it's 60% or 95%, there's still a piece that's not 100.
And we can
Right,
always do
so
better.
either way, for our
But we're
kids who
looking
aren't
at
being
chronic, so we
successful,
want to just get past
right,
that chronic.
we need to get them engaged and involved, because there's a good chance that those kids that are unsuccessful are gonna struggle going forward, and they're part of our community. We're gonna be supporting them as we move forward too. So we wanna make sure that we can get them to the best spot they can to launch them.
I guess, I'm definitely not taking away from what we have and what we offer our students, because I think we do a lot of really wonderful things. But we're spinning our wheels, and I don't know this for certain, but I feel like we're spinning our wheels, but we're still in the exact same place, if not worse. So what are we going to do differently now, right at this very second, to help that and find a solution to that word chronic absenteeism? We're missing a lot of kids, and what are we gonna do differently to make sure?
But I
they're
think as
here?
a board, what we're missing too is it's not monolithic. There is no one size fits all. So we could say today, we're going to implement this policy or this thing to do this. But I think what we have to look at too, as I was technically an absentee student. I mean, I missed a whole year, but just because I went to the doctor's once a week. I had to go to Boston once a month. So I think there are so many factors that drive kids. I have the flu, I'm out so many days. There's so many ways to be made on that chronic absenteeism. I remember when we were talking about it last year, that I was just shocked in all the ways that you miss this many days. And that's why I think what we're doing with the individual goals can't be understated in such a way. Maybe not something that's going to show the immediate impact, but setting up that individual goals. And again, we talked about awareness as a board. I think that awareness is key because, again, I mean, I look at it and I say, oh, okay, it's easy for me to say these are the absenteeism kids. And also, just because absenteeism isn't synonymous with failing with school, I think we have to, that's even more why we have to look at each individual case and looking at those things. And I think looking at it at the individual case, like you were saying, Fallon, about making sure those resources and that we're letting the kids know those opportunities and providing those things that, you know, I think just upping the amount of, I guess, individuality with each kid.
Yeah.
Because it is that individual pathway. And I think I don't want to label someone as a chronic absentee kid, because there's so much more to each situation. Like you mentioned in your case, staying home, working, having to do things to get through. And I think each of our students in our district has their own story, their own thing going on. And so I think if we're really, we're gonna do this individual goal setting, we're working on these things, and I say, let's do it, but let's make sure we're doing it really well. But I think we're on the right track moving to that kind of model, because I think the awareness, realizing that, maybe I have to do it differently, but there is a path for me to succeed, even if I can't see it on my own. That's why I'm working with these adults and people that can help me get there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good job silencing the crowd, Tim.
So I think one of the things that we need to do, and thank you for all your comments. I mean, this is an area that we've been focusing on ongoing since I've been here. I mean, this is ongoing. This is not a new issue for school districts. And I think, during COVID, those years, a lot of districts went up toward nationally between 40 and 50% of kids were chronically absent. And those numbers were similar for us. We're down in the upper 30s last year. So we dropped them last year. We need to continue that work, and I think the work that we're doing around the individualized goal setting, I think we need to come back and provide some more information to the board about the multi-tiered systems of supports, because I would put our systems and our resources, we have those in place, and we've got the people in place. My concern is, as we look at budget down the road, how are we going to prioritize the right people and the right resources to meet the kids' needs? And I think that's going to be something we're going to have to look at down the road here. And also, as Jen was talking about, how can we dig somebody 5 weeks? Somebody talked about the 5 weeks, one or the other.
I did.
And sorry, really making sure, and we'll bring that back to the board on an ongoing basis. That's why we brought the attendance is up, because that's a goal area that we're focused on this year. It's one of the primary areas in our strategic coherence plan this year. In outcome 1 is around attendance, and we'll continue to bring that. We're keeping it at the fore in the schools as well as here publicly at the board, and I think that's an important piece. And I think as we prepare the budget for next year, we need to look at what those priorities are going to be, because we may have to look at how do we pare things back, how do we make sure that we're being as fiscally responsible, but also trying to maximize the resources. And one of the pieces that's here is that we also have to figure out how to help families prioritize attendance, and being at school is important, because it starts with getting up in the morning and coming to school. I was talking to one of the kids recently in a meeting that I was having with them, and we talked about the fact that he says it's hard to get up in the morning, and I talked about when I was his age, my father used to shake me by the ankle and say, let's go up and go out to work. It was 5 o'clock in the morning, and we went out and we did the horses, we did all the work, and I had perfect attendance from 7th grade through 12th grade. I never was late. Literally it was perfect. And yet I was out working every morning, but I was in that school by 7:30 in the morning, ready to learn. And we talked about that. And, I said, how do we help you get that motivated? And so we had a good conversation, and what he talked about was some of the strategies that he needed in place. But he has a lot of other obstacles that he was doing as well. And I think those are the kinds of things, that, to Tim's point, was that every one of the cases is unique and different, that each of the kids brings strengths, weaknesses, and the families have other obstacles that they're bringing to the table as well. I think the other piece that, and it was alluded to, was the work that we're doing around bidisciplinary projects and transdisciplinary projects in the center. We're starting those at the junior high level. Those are really engaging the kids. We had 201 kids that walked out with at least one point toward their seal of civic readiness out of junior high. To have 201 kids, that's 91 or 92% of the class is walking out, and it goes to, what are those next steps? What are those courses? What are those things? Because the kids want to achieve that. So I think what we have to do is work from the middle with those bidisciplinary projects. And if you look at the Portrait of Graduate, it's a big part of that. How do we now work from 7th grade forward to 12th grade and 7th grade backward down to the lower grades, and build that type of learning and approach as we move forward? Because that's central to the work that the Portrait of the Graduate's all about. So it's just kind of my thought. We'll bring more of the data back to you, but I think the attendance is at the forefront this year, and that's why it was number 1 on that report today. And then we talked about the professional development that we worked on, and some of there was connections to absenteeism in a lot of that professional development work, if you look at the content that they were looking at, and all of the PLC and PLT work that they did on that day. So really talking about how do you get kids excited about learning? That's the other piece, that's the elephant in the room. Today's kids, getting them excited, they're in that, a lot of them were, they want that immediate gratification, and with the games and all the things that they do, classrooms don't necessarily look like that yet. They're rows, they're still, there was a comment that somebody said the other day, classrooms look more like rows again in the last 3 to 4 years again. You know, it was coming back. So we've got to break away from that because that's not exciting to kids. That's not what's invigorating to kids. So there's a lot of different levels to how do we create classrooms and learning experiences and help our teachers do that. It's complex as well.
So are we definitely gonna get the, every 5 weeks, get a report with attendance, about attendance every 5 weeks? So that would mark us
So it's once
at
a month.
like Christmas time for the next one.
Yeah.
Like Fallon's Christmas present, 5 weeks.
So we don't have a second board meeting in December.
We don't have a second.
Okay.
So do
Right.
you want it
We have a
December 10th
budget.
or do you want it January?
We have a budget 10th or it's January 14th.
January 14th would give you 2 months worth of, the next 2 months worth of data.
Or
Get November and
December 10th, or at our budget workshop on the 17th.
Well,
I think January works best for another 2 months to look at it,
All right, so we'll work, so
because that works with everybody else.
yeah, I'd say bring it,
January 14th.
sounds
Yeah.
good.
That's good. I just also want to point out that according to our policy, with the regulation that, the superintendent, or the Board of Education directs the superintendent to annually review and publish the attendance procedures for each school. So if the, with the interventions outlined in the pyramid of interventions, so if that's something moving forward too, as we're talking about attendance, we can get an update of each school, what the pyramid is and going, what we can do differently.
Which is really our multi-tiered systems of support.
Right, but each school is charged of doing it a little bit differently and by.
So the high school does it with goal setting.
Right.
Is that, am I
Well, they all
understanding
do
it
it
right?
with goal setting.
Oh, okay.
They all do it with goal setting, and as far as the policy and our school and liaisons and things, that's part of what probably needs to be updated in the policy, because it's pretty universal now, it's not individual.
Yes, it's,
There's not any school that has a different structure than any other right now, so it's the same.
We try to create
Goal setting.
consistency across the schools, the same resources, similar supports, so they're able to be consistent, because we do have mobility between schools.
So put that policy on me for your next policy committee for you guys to look at. And-
Well, it might be something that we wanna wait a little bit until we get the updated data and.
But you could take more than one
But yeah,
meeting to
absolutely,
definitely
because more
discuss
than
it.
one, it's gonna be something that, it's gonna be a little bit fluid and ongoing, I think, in policy.
Start to compile your notes.
Thank you.
It's in my calendar. I won't forget it.
That's it for me, sorry guys.
Oh, you're fine. Good discussion.
That was a conclusion of the superintendent's report.
Okay. Alrighty, then we're going to move on to action 4.01, accept the financials.
Move it.
Second. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstaining? Passes 700. Action 4.02, approve disposal of surplus property.
Move it.
second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstaining? Passes 700. Action 4.03, accept audit.
Move it.
Second.
And you all have your audit books
Yes.
that have been provided. All of those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstaining? Passes 700. Action 4.04, approve corrective action plan.
Move it.
Second. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstaining? Passes 700. Action 4.05, award contracts for the 2023 district-wide capital project phase 1.
Move it.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstaining? Passes 700. Action 5.01, approve committee on special education.
Move it.
Second. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstaining? Passes 700. Action 5.02, approve the combined hockey.
Quick question, did we look at this last meeting, or just, and not vote, or, I don't know why I thought we voted on it.
So we did, Tim. It's a great question. I put in the weekly update as well as, or it was in the narrative. So when we were going through also the spring, remember we went through all the different teams, we were having a discussion about the configuration. One of the school districts, Jordan Elbridge, indicated they had no players And so when we put the resolution forward about a month and a half, 2 months ago roughly, Jordan Elbridge didn't have any players. They reached out on October 10th, 11th, something like that, indicating, which was after our last board meeting, it was in between, that they were now interested in, they had two players rather, that they had to play. They've been a part of our foundation combined team since we started. And they asked, the superintendent reached out as well, asking for our consideration.
Yeah, I thought that's how my talking software was trying to tell me that was different than
Yep.
we, so.
No, they were one of the founding teams, or one of the founding school districts with our combined teams.
And is each district contributing equally?
So what we're doing is it's divided, there are 30 players, the costs are all added up and they're divided 30 different ways. So if you have
Okay.
10 players, you pay for 10.
Move it?
Okay, move it.
Second? Oh, sorry.
So who's second?
Either one.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Lori. Okay. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstaining? Passes 7-0-0. I'd like to ask my colleagues to batch our personnel, or our personnel action 6.01 to 6.16.
Move it.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstaining? Passes 7-0-0. Okay, so moved was by Tim
Yep.
and Tim, or Tim and Fallon?
Tim Junior.
Tim, okay. Tim Junior. All right, gonna move on to our board forum. Randall, start with you this evening.
Oh, just want to thank everyone for the reports, thank our veterans, and that's it.
Mrs. Hutchinson?
Thank you for the reports. Thank you, everybody, for the robust discussion. I know it's a function of, all of us sitting here. Thank you for your patience, Mr. and Mrs. Hendrickson, with me. And that's it. Thank you so much.
Paul?
I want to say thank you for the reports. It was well done, a lot of work into it. And I want to, congratulate all the schools on the Veterans Day. I was so impressed when I stopped at the junior high one. It's just so well done. And he was right, they had tears, some of them had tears in their eyes. And I was in, they had them in gym 3. And they felt proud. I mean, you could just look around and see how proud they were that somebody's they're being acknowledged. And, so I'm kind of grateful for that. That's very nice.
Thank you. Ms. Mainville?
That's what really stuck with me with this board meeting, not in attendance, but, Mr. Kaprowski and Mrs. Platt, just making those connections, and those kinds of things that they did, that's, in my eyes, that is what is going to help bring, students to school. We're getting our community involved. We're bringing our community to our students. The sense of their legacy, living on, through the younger generation speaking about them to them, and for them knowing that they understand why this day is happening it's second to none. So that was a really great event that they put on at the junior high, and I'm thankful that we do those things for our students. And I look forward to this attendance thing, problem solving together, because I think together with all the minds in this room, I really feel like we can make some sort of impact moving forward. So I'm excited for that.
Thank you. Mr. DeJorge?
I want to thank Sully. He came in and spoke on his own. A little bit frightening in itself.
Yeah, he was.
They did great. 2 schools that did Veterans Day?
All 6.
All 6.
Oh yeah, I just talked about the 2 that I went to.
Except you went. I had an opportunity a couple of years ago to go to the VA with a teacher, Mrs. Altmeter. She took her choir course, and everybody was in a big room. They wheeled the vets in their wheelchairs, the ones that could make it, and they sang. And I think that she took a bunch of cards up, but it was amazing how our students went over, hugged them, spoke with them personally. I just know myself as a kid, I don't know that I could have done that. So we're doing something right here in Fulton, because it continues. Now I'm talking when I went there 3 years ago, and now they're still embracing the vets, so. Anyway, that's all I got, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Connors?
I had lots of things to say, but of course I was gonna start with Sully as well, so you took that from me. But really, for him tonight to come up and do that as the only student, was very brave, and he had great words to share with us. I think there were also some words you said too, Nick, that we're doing some things right around here. And sometimes, when we have so many things thrown at us that we're trying to figure out, it's easy to lose sight of that. And I think it's always important, whether it's our kids, whether it's our students, whether it's our staff, everybody around, we are doing the right things. And sometimes, I know myself, I find this hard, but celebrating those little successes, because gradually those little successes are what eventually are gonna bring us to the mountaintops of our big goals. So I just hope we can continue to do that, continue to move forward, and maybe not over beyond things, but remain on top of them, so the light, as Mr. Hendricks said, is always on them, so we're aware they don't slip away, but not to the point that we're causing it to be detrimental and we aren't moving forward in any ways, because it is that perfect balance, and I think as long as we're pushing to maintain that, then we're moving in the right direction.
Thank you. Great discussion tonight. I always love hearing what everybody has to say. I feel like together we, like John said, we're going to come up with ideas and solutions. And I appreciate all that Jeff and Renee and your team do to bring this information to us and help us, see what's going on in the building level, since we're not really there to see that. So I really appreciate that. I like that, we're going to be looking at it a little bit closer with you guys. Thank you, Fallon, for bringing the policy to our attention. Appreciate that. I also want to do a shout out for our Miracle on 34th Street cast. They did a great job, thanks to Mr. Briggs and his directors. If you didn't get a chance to see it, it was amazing, and even my husband, the Grinch, wanted to go home and put his Christmas tree up, but we did not yet. But, it was a great show, and the kids did a great job, so it got us into the season of Christmas already, so that was wonderful. I love all of the Veterans Day. I know back in May, I was able to do something from Memorial Day at Valony, but to hear that each of the schools were doing something today to honor, or this past week to honor our vets, absolutely amazing. I love seeing the kids when they meet those World War II vets. I can only imagine how it was this time along. So to all of our families out there and our staff who are vets, thank you for your service. Mr. DeLorme, thank you for your service to our country. We appreciate you all. I wanted to just do a little shout out there for everybody. And we are going to move on and ask if there is anybody in the audience who would like to speak with the board. Now is your chance. Okay, we will then enter a executive session this evening. So if I can have somebody move 7.03.
Move it.
Second.
Nick and Jen. All those in favor? Jen. Nick and Jen.
I know, I was.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstaining? Passes 7-0-0. Thank you everyone for joining us. We will be back. And
Nobody
Thank you and welcome back. I need to ask somebody to move action 7.04 disciplinary appeal.
Move it.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstaining? Passes 7-0-0. Action 8.01 adjournment.
Move it.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstaining? Passes 7-0-0. Have a good evening, everybody.